So just for a 4th of July jaunt, you, your dad, and your sister decided to go climb to 10,888 feet.
Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
So Darren, welcome. Thanks for making this happen. We had a little technical challenges at first, but we solved them like we actually knew what we were doing. So that's great. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about this hiking and climbing aspect of your life? How's that?
Yeah, right on. Thank you, Scott, for having me on and having the ability to share my stories and adventures. So, I've been raised Tacoma native, born and raised here in Washington State. Grew up hiking, grew up hunting, fishing. Dad took me out a lot and explored the outdoors and the adventures. Early mornings, whether or not I didn't like it or not, I look back on it now and I love them. Those early mornings were just awesome. Kind of all started back in 2011 now when me and my dad and my sister, we decided to go up to Camp Muir for the day. It was July 4th weekend, Saturday, super duper busy. This is one of those days where we didn't get an early start. And so we were just kind of one with the crowd, mingling, kind of exploring the area. And this is, a lot of hiking, hunting, and fishing, but this is my first time like getting altitude and really, exploring the high alpine of Mount Rainier and the high elevations. So no doubt it got to me pretty quick, and it was a bluebird sunny day. So I'm sure that was another issue with the sun beating down, no sunscreen. So very, very amateurish right now what I was doing. But I was really pumped. I was really excited, but I got stopped. Mount Rainier stopped me at 8,900, maybe 9,000 feet, and I was gassed. I was very, very tired.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because for those of us that aren't hikers, how high up is Camp Muir?
Camp Muir is 10,088 feet. So, it just depends on how active you are. Go ahead.
Wow. So just for a 4th of July jaunt, you, your dad, and your sister decided to go climb to 10,888 feet.
Yes, 10,088 feet. And from Paradise elevation is 5,400 feet. So we're gaining just a little bit under 4,700 feet. So 4,688.
Okay, that's still
and in the day that's a good push, and especially with elevation and altitude, that some people don't make it. Some people get sick. You lose a breath or two, and it's intense just to get to 10,000 feet. There's not a lot of areas in Washington State where you can get to 10,000 feet pretty easily in a day.
Right.
You got Mount Baker. Mount Baker is a great climb. Mount Adams is great to do. And then, Little Tahoma on Mount Rainier, but there's not a lot of other areas in Washington where you can get above 10,000 or at 10,000 pretty easily. So it was, we decided to go for a jaunt, and it was very, I look back on it and it was very humbling.
Okay. How old were you at that time?
That was July 4th. So I was 19 years old.
Okay.
Coming out of doing community college back in Tacoma, doing summer work too. So not really actually hiking a lot, but still trying to get out as much as possible. And then Dad.
Okay. So you were in relatively good shape.
Yes. Yeah. Relatively good shape.
Okay.
And then when you kind of mix the elevation gain and add a little bit of altitude, since I've never been to altitude, absolutely. I was gassed, and I was 1,000 feet, more than 1,000 feet from Camp Muir, and I was just tired. I fell asleep wherever I stopped at. That's how tired I was. Didn't get no nausea. There was no sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no. So I think, you make it sound like you were almost like falling asleep where you were. So you stop for a second, you fall asleep on your feet, if you will. But just to kind of give you a little bit of a ribbing, and we don't know each other, so don't take any of this personally. I don't mean it like that. How'd your sister do?
Oh,
was she gassed too, though?
No, this is the funny thing. So my dad and my sister were doing great. And here I was just tired. I was gassed. They were doing fine. They wanted to keep going. I was tired, nausea, sick, not like sick, but just didn't want to move, major nausea. And I laid down and was like, I'm going to stay here. So yeah, they beat me that day. My sister, she was 22. She was 22 that day. So to be in great shape and then to mix altitude and elevation with a good, I had a good decent sized backpack on me too with my gear. So yeah, it was very interesting and very, very humbling.
Okay. But you didn't let that defeat you. You have gone back.
Absolutely. I was planning, talking to Dad and be like, we got to get back up there. Dad and Alicia, they didn't go up. They didn't continue that day. They came down with me. So my sister went back to college and I was doing a little bit more training. I was buying gear, researching gear. Some people climb Mount Rainier once a week with the guide services, and people go up to Camp Muir like it's nothing. And I'm a beginner. So I'm Googling, how to hike up to Camp Muir, and we wanted to spend the night if we had the chance to get up there. So it was, did training the rest of July, August. And then I think it was second week in September, we decided to pack our gear up. Dad and I pack our gear up, get an overnight permit for Camp Muir, and climb up. We started earlier this time to beat the heat. There was less snow on the snowfield, so there was kind of firm snow, a little bit of some firmer snow. But it wasn't, it kept me going good. Everything worked out pretty good. Didn't need no crampons or whatnot. But Dad and I made it. We made it in a good solid 5.5 hours.
Okay. So I obviously, if you look at me, you go, yeah, he's never been to Camp Muir. So for the listeners that haven't been there, which may be most of them, and there might not be, but what is Camp Muir? Because, I can paint this mental picture that it's like a real nice campground and it's big and it's got everything you need, but I think I'm wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a great base camp for the normal main route on Mount Rainier. It is very rocky. Even my dad was thinking the same thing. I thought there would be platforms up here. I thought it would be much wider. So one thing I was really thinking of, it's not, it's very rocky. It's very rugged. There's lots of snow, and then there's lots of rock. There's lots of dangers too up there. It's a great viewing area for Mount Rainier to look up and see the new route.
Okay.
But it's not a normal route. I mean, it's not a normal camp. There's no bear poles. It is very cold, especially in the summer. Winter, I mean, if you can get up to Camp Muir in the winter, then that's a feat by itself, because it is barren wasteland. It's cold and windy. But in the springtime and summer, the crowds come out, and it's a great day hike. It's very, very beautiful up there, though. Some of the best views ever. But it's a great spot to even just spend the night. And then you're even if you go on a day hike, you're gonna spend the night, or just on a day hike. Sorry, if you go on a day hike, you're gonna look up at the mountain. You'll be like, I'm gonna summit that thing one day. So it was pretty much that September when my dad and I spent the night. I kind of looked up. We were 4,000 feet from the summit, so I kind of decided in my head, Mount Rainier is not gonna beat me. I'm going to keep on going, keep on training, and work hard. And it's a milestone too, because every time we see it in the cities, every time we see it in the lowlands, it sticks out, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, me and my dad, he decided not to climb with me. So I decided to kind of grab my friends and learn from my friends, research more, and start climbing from there. But some people love to just climb Mount Rainier, and that's totally fine. That's awesome. There's other peaks around, and that's what I started doing. So the next year in 2012, I got great mountaineering boots, great mountain gear, climbed Mount St. Helens for the first time in the winter, which was not easy either. For a gain, what's the gain? It's about 5,600 in the winter.
Okay.
So it's just started off with St. Helens, kept progressing from there. There's a big gap. Yes. I did do Adams. That was the next year in 2013 with a buddy of mine. If I didn't have my good friends to climb with me, I was on Cascade Climbers and Northwest Hikers, putting my, application or climbing resume in, looking for climbing partners to start off. If I wanted to go climb St. Helens or Mount Adams, I'd put in my application and be like, hey, I'm looking to go climb this certain mountain, this certain date. Let me know if you're interested, and we can link up. One great guy came about from some of those applications. A great climbing partner. We've done Helens and Mount Hood together twice on Mount Hood. He's such a great guy. We tried the brothers in the Olympics 2 years ago. And we did Shasta back in 2019. So James, if you're hearing this, you're a great climber, and keep up.
Shout out to James. So you practiced and got more proficient on some of these smaller peaks, which are still, I don't mean to dismiss them at all. They're daunting. They're not easy. These are, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to have, at least I am of the opinion, you have to know what you're doing and have gear. You're not going to run up there in tennis shoes and shorts.
Correct. Yes.
How long did you train, if you will, before you tried Rainier for the first time?
So the first time was in 2014. So a couple years for sure. Definitely didn't want to disappoint myself. I definitely wanted to make sure I was ready and fit, whether it was climbing St. Helens multiple times, training, weightlifting, cardio. I did St. Helens a couple times, once or twice during 2012 and 2013. 2014, that was actually really interesting because James, my climbing partner, that's when we did Hood. And we did Mount Hood before Mount Rainier. Mm-hmm. And so we got to the summit of Mount Hood, and from the summit of Mount Hood, you can see into Washington and into Oregon, south of Oregon. But when you're at the summit of Mount Hood looking north, you can see the Columbia Gorge, the Columbia River, and you can see St. Helens, Adams, and then in the middle, but in between those two is Mount Rainier. And I looked at Mount Rainier, and I'm like, this is it. If I can do a single car to car push during the night of Mount Hood in June of 2014, then I'm going to give Rainier a shot. So 3 years later, got my buddies together. This was all independent, so no guide service. We're all communicating through each other, through gear, making sure everything is good. Crevasse rescue and training for sure. We did, what was it? We climbed to Camp Muir in mid-July, and spent the night at Camp Muir. And then we pushed for the summit the next day. And that was back in 2014. And it was great.
So honestly, your first time up there.
Yep, correct. First time up there, it was.
So your first time up there, how many people were in your group?
So it was me and two other good friends, and then one of their friends. She tagged along. She's climbed with us before, so I knew her before and trusted her on the rope team and whatnot. Speaking of rope team, it's not many. You can't climb Mount Rainier unless you do a solo permit. If you're really that interested in climbing it by yourself, and that's totally fine. But usually most climbers climb with rope, and we're all linked together. Glacier travel.
So 4 of you made it to Camp Muir, and then the next day you pushed for the summit. So how early did you leave in the morning? I mean, did you like start super early? I mean, a couple of my friends that are, climbers have, part of the reason I'm not a climber is because it sounds like you start like at 2 a.m. It doesn't sound like a good time to me. But in all seriousness, when do you start that push?
So usually it just depends on the team. It depends on the beta and the research you've done. I've seen, teams leave at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. from Camp Muir. Guide services, depending on the guides, services can leave at 11 p.m. or usually midnight. But we want to try, and we were trying to get ahead of the guide services to not get caught in traffic jams. So we left, I think we left at 10 p.m., woke up at 9, left at 10 p.m. It's just the earlier the better, just so that you have that much time, more time to climb in the night when snow is more firm. So the route is mostly intact. The hazards are more low when it comes to rockfall and icefall.
Okay.
So that's the majority. If you're ever at sunrise at night, let's say you're at sunrise doing astrophotography, or just spending the night at sunrise, and you look up at the mountain and you see these dots on the mountain, those are the headlamps. Pretty much every night from May till September, you will see headlamps on the mountain, and those are the climbers starting super duper early going to the summit.
Now, being a complete layman here, it seems odd to me. You're saying, and I would think that going in the dark would have a whole nother set of risks to it, like not good visibility and not seeing what's necessarily in front of you. And yet that's not what everybody does. Everyone goes in the dark because they want to get up there. And you're saying because it's a safer climb. So what sort of headlamps? I mean, what are you guys wearing, and how good of visibility do you have when you're doing this? Because that seems scary to me.
Yes, absolutely. I've heard from guide services and people that have guided clients on top of the mountain that, you can see sparks coming off of your crampons. If you don't know what crampons are those metal spikes that are attached to your mountaineering boots to give you more traction with the snow and the ice. And late at night, you can get crampons that'll hit the rock and it'll spark people. It won't spark people. It'll just set a spark off. And that's just one thing at night that is just that I've heard people just freak out and they're like, no, I'm done. Whether it's on the rock or just at night, it's just very, very daunting. And you got to kind of, that's where you got to work on your mental game, and you got to follow the route. You got to follow your teammates, trust your teammates. Because you're up there for a reason. You're going to tag the summit of Mount Rainier. You're going to go to the top. You're going to go to the roof of Washington. So at night, we got all of our gear on. We got gloves. We got our headlamps. Our headlamps, are super bright. Especially at night, you got to bring an extra pair of batteries just in case, because likely you may have to change your headlamp batteries. Anything from a black diamond to a Petzl headlamp is really good. There's different modes: low light, high light, red light. But there's usually, if you know where you're going and you know the route, then there isn't too much of an issue there. For us independent, for me and my team, we since it was our first time up there, there was definitely lots of mental issues, whether it was, route issues. How fast are we going? Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? How's everyone doing? Breathing wise, is everyone cold? How's everyone doing? Are you too warm? Do we need to stop for breaks? And there's not, on a mountain with glaciers, rockfall, and icefall, there's not a lot of places to stop for a good 5-10 minutes for breaks. So we had to, keep going in some spots. And then ultimately we did find good, safe, non-hazard areas to take breaks.
So you have a team. None of you had been to the summit before, and you've got this route mapped out. It's not like Siri's going to tell me to take a turn at the next intersection. So how do you know that you're staying on your course? Is the route marked on the mountain? I mean, help me out here. How did you know you were staying on course?
Yeah, absolutely. So this route we climbed is the main route on Rainier. So it is heavily trafficked. There are wands. There are other people in front of you or other people behind you. Just depends on since we were going so early too, there were no people in front of us, but there was a good, decent boot pack to allow us to know where we were going. So we never got lost on the mountain. The main route is called the Disappointment Cleaver route. And it is a tough route still, just because of the altitude and the hazard. But with the boot pack in front of us, yes, it was fairly good to know where we were at. There are definitely other routes on the mountain that do not have wands and is completely a wilderness climb, where you could take one bad turn and then you have to go back. But this is the main route. It's fairly wanded. It's fairly marked. Mount Rainier itself, the national park, has a climbing blog every year. Usually it's updated during the busy time. And it's fairly well known. But it's still a mountain, and you still got to treat it with respect, just to make sure that you get down safe, your team gets down safe, and everyone has a good time though.
Okay. So let's go back. So you guys have okay. So thank you for helping me with that. So you guys are climbing, you're deciding if you're going too fast, too slow. You've got to take into account all the potential for rock or snow distraction, if you will, falling. So about how long did it take you to go from Camp Muir to the summit?
And so the average, give or take, the average time for guide services is about 5 hours. And we're independent,
Okay.
first time. And so we made it to the summit in about 7 hours. So definitely longer than a normal average time, but this was our first time up there, our first climb on Rainier. And so we're definitely going to take it a little bit slower, kind of enjoy it, taking the views and taking our breaks too when we need to. If we take a break and then a couple minutes later someone needs to take a break again, that's totally fine, because we want to be safe and we don't want to rush things, and we want to make sure everyone is okay.
Right. So it took you about 7 hours. And how long did you stay at the summit?
It's unbelievable. When you get to the crater rim, so the main route takes you to the south side on the crater rim. So you're at 14,350 feet. You get to the crater rim, and you're just so ecstatic and so happy. And besides being ecstatic and happy, you are tired, you are hungry, and you are most likely cold. And so this is kind of like a turning point. The true summit is on the other side of the crater. So you have a decision whether or not to walk across the crater and touch the summit. Maybe a 20-minute walk, maybe, or start descending, depending on your time too. If it's if the sun is up and it's been warm for, let's say the sun's been up for an hour or two, you might want to start heading down so you can get down safe before the snow gets really, really soft. But we got up there just a little bit after sunrise, and we decided to. We all felt good. We were tired, we were exhausted, but we just we felt good, and that's the main thing. No one had a headache, no one was nauseous, no one was sick. So we decided to walk across the crater and touch the summit, touch Columbia Crest for the first time in. It was me and my friend's first time, but my main two friends, it was their second time. So
okay.
They did the Emmons in 2013. So they were kind of guiding me and my friend up. So it was great for them to help me guide to the summit, me and my friend. I was tired. I remember some of it. And so besides the summit, maybe just a few feet lower is, they call it Register Rock. And that is where your summit register is. It's kind of protected from the wind and the cold. So we signed the summit register there. And I remember putting the book back in the summit register box and falling asleep right on the summit register. I do remember that.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's how tired I was.
So how is the view up there?
In all my adventures and climbs and explorations, sometimes it's tough to get words in, and it's hard to find those words of how beautiful something can be from a different angle, because we don't see that every day. We can look down. If you're looking from the summit, if it's a clear bluebird day, you can see down into the Puget Sound. You can see Commencement Bay. You can see the islands. You can see Vashon Island. You can see Bainbridge, and you can see beautiful 360 degrees. You can see Mount Stewart. You can see Baker and Glacier Peak. You can see a great view of Adams and St. Helens and Mount Hood. And if it's a super clear day, you can see Jefferson into Oregon. And that's one reason why I do these climbs and to push myself, is to see these views, because we don't see these views every day, and to see them and document them is just amazing. It's unbelievable what Mother Nature has out for us. if it's a mountain far off in the distance, or the sun coming up on the roof of Washington. It's just beautiful. Totally amazing. Just incredible.
So that first time when you fell asleep, you weren't up there very long. I know that it's not like you took a 4-hour nap. But how long were you guys up there in the crater area?
How long? Probably an hour. A quick 20-minute walk. It's
okay.
really,
so that's a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny because we climb for 7 hours, and we're on the summit for about around an hour. Even in the summer when it's 80 degrees down in the lowlands, the summit of Rainier is cold. It is usually around freezing, if not maybe slightly above. You can have great weather up there with no wind, but this one I know was a little cold, and it was probably freezing, if not slightly below freezing. You had to have gloves on. I remember that though.
Okay. So we'll call it the summit, layman's terms, you're up there for basically an hour, taking in the views, catching your breath, and then you have to go back down. That sounds like it's the easy part. Maybe I'm oversimplifying. I know I'm oversimplifying this whole process. But when you go down, do you go all the way down to past Camp Muir, or do you stay at Camp Muir a second night?
So going down is probably I would say it is a little bit harder. Because usually the day before or the night before, it depends on how you do it. Some people climb up to Camp Muir and then summit the next day. Some people climb up to Camp Muir, spend a night, go up to Ingraham Flats, spend another night, and then go to the summit. That was my recent climb back in July, just this last month. That's what I did. The first time we went up to Muir and then went to the summit the next day. The amount of sleep you get on the mountain is probably next to zero, especially if you are getting up at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. You're probably just, taking a small nap here and there or getting little to no sleep. And you're at altitude, maybe you're at altitude for the first time, or maybe you're really anxious to hit the summit and get up and go, and you're not going to sleep. You're going to lay in bed, either really warm in your sleeping bag or just really, really anxious. Your heart's beating because of the altitude. So you probably not, next to no sleep, and that's going up, and then you're going down. So going down depends, average maybe 3, 4, I'd say 4 hours going down maybe. Just depends on the route too. If you need to, let's say you need to end run a crevasse. End running a crevasse is just finding the smallest part of it and then stepping over it, or walking all the way around it. If there's a traffic jam, maybe going down. Maybe there's a ladder on the route and people are waiting to get down. That usually occurs on Mount Rainier, and in the mid-season or late season. Nowadays, it seems to happen almost in the early season too. So there's probably a ladder on the route, and you might have to wait in the traffic jam. You might.
So what do you mean a ladder? I mean, do you mean a ladder like? What do you mean by a ladder?
So what? Not the National Park Service, but the guide services that are the commercial guide services on Rainier. Usually there's 3 main ones, and they will eventually, in the early season, April and May, they will work together in establishing a route on Rainier. Either they could be the first ones to be climbing Rainier, to guide, to help their clients and whatnot. So us independent climbers, we're kind of just following in their footsteps and thanking the guide services for help establishing the route.
Right.
Through my climbing history and whatnot, they do great work out on Rainier. They do great work off of Rainier. So yes, definitely give a little thanks to the guide services, because it would be a little bit tougher if they were not establishing the route. It just depends on the guides and what they think of. They may place a ladder. They may place a horizontal ladder, and then maybe later in the season they may place a vertical ladder when the crevasses open up a little bit more and there's less zigzagging that the route can have. So they may place a vertical ladder. We did not have a vertical ladder. I do remember we did have a horizontal ladder at about 11,200, 11,300. They call this area high crack.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where usually a normal area of the glacier, it would fold down just imagine a brownie or a piece of cake falling off, going vertically down. But this one kind of splits uphill. So the guides normally place a ladder, and it just depends on year to year as well. I know this year there is no ladder at high crack, as far as I know. So there was a horizontal ladder, and usually they're not much of a traffic jam or not much of a difficulty. But then it also depends on your skill level and how comfortable you are on a horizontal or vertical ladder crossing over a crevasse, and how's your mentality, and going down too. It's absolutely a little bit difficult, much more cumbersome. One thing to do is always, when you come across a ladder, you want to double check it if the picket is in place. If the handhold is good, just double check everything, because the majority of the accidents do happen on the way down. You're very, very tired, hungry, thirsty. You could easily trip on the rope. You could slip and fall, and then we may have an issue on our hands. So, safety first. We all want to have fun, but let's keep our rope taut. Let's keep our eye sacks in the correct hand, and let's get down safe. So it probably was since this was our first time getting down, we were very tired and very exhausted. So I would say a good 4 or 5 hour descent back to Camp Muir from the summit.
So that's a 12-hour round trip.
Yes, correct.
I mean, you put 12 hours in.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
You could probably say minimum at the average 11 or 12 for guided or independent too.
Oh, okay. So you got to Camp Muir. Did you guys stay there a second night, or did you go all the way down the first trip?
No, we decided to go down and go back to civilization, grab a hamburger, celebrate.
And how long did it take you to get from Muir to all the way down? Celebration.
So if no one has ever tried glissading, I would highly recommend it. Glissading is literally just sliding on snow on your behind. It is very if you can't let's say most people just walk down, but there's these glissade chutes in popular areas. If you start sliding down these glissade chutes, they will become almost like bobsledding chutes where you can just slide on your behind and just cruise down. And I tell you, that is one of the most funnest things you've ever done.
That sounds awesome. Actually,
if you want a quick way to get down, if you don't know how to ski or snowboard, and if you want a quick way down, just find a chute and start sliding on your snow. Start sliding on the snow and enjoy it.
So how long are these chutes?
It just depends on the angle of the hill too. The angle, if it's 35, 40 degrees or 20, 25, the steeper, the better. because you get down quicker, but some of the
Sure.
steeper ones kind of mellow out at the end. So some of the shallow ones, maybe 15, 20 degrees. And that can go for quite a distance. A couple hundred feet, definitely. Mount Adams, if anyone's climbed Mount
Okay.
Adams, has a great glissade chute on the south side. You can descend 2,000 feet in about 5-10 minutes. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, with your ice axe,
All right,
make sure
so-
you're braking. But yeah, that's a quick way down.
So we got you safely down your first trip. You celebrated. So a couple of questions come to mind. You were in shape, but how'd you feel the next day?
Oh, I was dead, just exhausted, very, very, very sore, very tired.
Mm-hmm.
So I, just took relaxing, rested. Didn't want to climb it again, right? The next day, obviously.
Oh, that was my next question. Okay. So you didn't want to climb it. You were done. At that point, you're like, okay, I got this. I've got the t-shirt, if you will.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I was, I had my goal.
But we know that that's.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You're fine.
But we know that that's not, you didn't stop. So we know you've kept going. So the question I have is, so you're tired, you're sore, as you well deserved. You were satisfied. It wasn't like you didn't want to climb. I'm not going to say you're like, I'm never going to do that again, but you're like content. You were enjoying the moment, if you will. When did the bug bite to go do it a second time?
Gosh, I would want to say, honestly, I would probably say a week later.
Okay. All right. So it really wasn't that long.
Being a young boy, I was sore and exhausted, but healed up pretty quickly. Got back out there, and I kind of questioned myself, and I'm like, okay, now, so what's next? I mean, for Rainier, if you want a enduring challenge, if you want a physical, mental challenge, and see some of the best views and see some of the amazing landscapes that Mother Nature has to offer, go mountain climbing.
Mm-hmm.
You can have some of the hardest challenges in your life and be rewarded with the most beautiful landscape ever. And that's where my passion comes from. It's, once just wasn't enough, even if I climbed it with the same route, it was a different route. It was a different angle. If it was a different climb, it was with different people. So it didn't stop there. Rainier was was the tipping point.
Okay. So how many times have you summited Rainier?
So I just finished up my third summit this past July. From all three summits were from the same route, but they were all different because the mountain changes every single year. The first route, when I did, it traversed up. So it kind of circled the mountain. It went so we're on the east side of the mountain, climbing up, and we kind of dipped down southwest, and then we pretty much started going west across the mountain because the crevasses were so bad and the dangers were a little bit elevated. So that's kind of the normal route. The normal route does zigzag a little bit. So that was 2014. 2017, I went up with kind of like a volunteer group. So the crater scientists were doing observations and were doing research in the crater. Due to Mount Rainier's activity, the steam has kind of carved out these types of ice. What do you call them? trying to find the word. There's a map. The research scientists have mapped out these walls and these kind of like caverns underneath Mount Rainier's ice in the crater. And so the Mount Rainier scientists, they go up. This was 2017. I don't think they've been up since. But they bring all their science gear and their research equipment. So this was the year, they were asking for volunteers and be like, hey, we need help. We need volunteers to help bring our gear down. So that's what we were part of a team. It was me, one other climber I've climbed with, and then 2 other people that I've met with and climbed with a little bit before, and they're great. And that was 2017, but that was on the same route, but that actually connected with the Emmons route on the northeastern side. If people are familiar with the routes, they're not supposed to connect like that. That was a very long climb. That added an extra mile onto our climb on the mountain, and extra time too. So if you thought I was tired in 2014, this one in 2017 was probably double that, because we had to lose more elevation. We had to gain more elevation, and we didn't go on the south side and jumped into the crater. We traversed the east side and then the northeast side, and then met up with the true summit that way. So that was very interesting. And then we had to descend with not a lot of research gear. The research and their scientists, they divvied it out with many teams were volunteering. So we had no issue. It was either big batteries or just heavy gear. So it wasn't too bad. And then we went down the same route, had to regain our elevation and come back to camp and whatnot. 2017 was where we camped at Camp Muir one night and then went to the flats the second night. And the flats they call it high camp at 11,100 feet. That's you're camping on the Ingraham Glacier. There's no rocks that you can camp on. There's no rock surface. It's all glacier. The same with Camp Muir too. Camp Muir, there's a public shelter there that is first come first serve, but most people tend to camp at Camp Muir on the snow.
Let's shift gears just because I've got curiosity about some things here.
Absolutely.
How much gear are you taking? How much weight is your pack on a trip like this?
So it tends to be an average of 45 pounds for an independent group.
Okay.
My first summit in 2014 was about 50 pounds because I didn't have maybe the best gear. Maybe I took a lot of extra clothing just in case. And there's always that just in case scenario. So, bring it just in case. You never know if you get cold or too warm and whatnot. So I was not against, a 50-pound pack because sometimes you have to bring it. The 2017 was a little bit lighter because I was climbing more, hiking more, less weight, less different type of clothing, so less weight there. With me and my teammates, we divvied up all of our gear, so it was probably 45 pounds. And then in 2009, just this past month, it was probably about 43 pounds. And that was me and 2 other climbers.
Okay. And so your gear through the years, you've probably found, lighter weight things. Maybe your ice axe is a little lighter than the first generation when you had things like that. You can save weight by using higher tech tools, maybe like versus, you know, I'm thinking your axe could be something that could be made lighter and every bit as reliable, using something like, you know, carbon fiber or something like that. Will that work up there? I mean, does that work, or
Yeah, that can be
how much tech is involved?
yeah, that can be a factor, definitely. A lot of it is either clothing, lightweight stoves, uh, lightweight gear. A lot of it is food, a lot of food. Um, Nowadays, we're using freeze dried food, water. Water's definitely a big weight factor too. From your sleeping bag too. Your 30-degree sleeping bag may be 3 or 4 pounds when it's packed in, but when when you're doing all this hiking and climbing, adventuring, you kind of want a lightweight sleeping bag. So the one that I use is from Western Mountaineering. It's a 5-degree antelope sleeping bag, great sleeping bag to use. And that's just packed weight is a little bit over 2 pounds. So,
oh geez,
yeah, a little bit of difference there. And what?
Wow.
And before you think about it, when you just get into this, you're thinking about, okay, pounds, what can I get rid of here? What can I get rid of there? When you've been doing this for 10 plus years, either mountaineering, climbing, or hiking, you're starting to think of ounces. You're starting to think of, okay, what can I get rid of? What do I not need? What, can I diminish my food? Can I not bring my water? Because you can boil water up there. Can I lose this piece of clothing? Maybe I don't need that extra base layer. Maybe I don't need those extra socks. There's always that just in case scenario. But then if you're comfortable, you can, with losing a little bit more weight and being a little bit more, I don't want to say happy, but you're still going to be tired with 35, 40 pounds on your pack, but just losing a little bit of weight can help. And then just, bringing unnecessary items too, that can definitely cut out the weight factor. Definitely.
You're not bringing a Sudoku book or anything like that with you.
No, I mean, some people love to bring that, and I have nothing against that. I love to just stare out into Mother Nature and then just enjoy, whether it's a rockfall happening far away or watching the clouds come in. Even seeing the people come into camp and talking to them and, sharing their adventures and stories. I've met amazing people with great stories and seeing where they come from and be like, oh, how do you get drawn to Mount Rainier? It's just, they share their stories, and it's very humbling how we're attracted to Mother Nature and the mountain.
It's interesting you said that you're drawn to Mount Rainier, because recently guests on the show, and it's funny, things come in on what I'm learning about when we record these episodes, is things kind of come in waves for a while, right? And right now I've got a few people talking about Mount Rainier, and you just said drawn to Mount Rainier, and somebody else just had said drawn to Mount Rainier. So it's interesting, because I grew up in the kind of the Puyallup area, so the mountain was there whenever it was quote unquote out. Obviously clouds kept it from being seen every day, but I just took it for granted. It's there, and I never really felt any noticeable pull to it. Like it was just in the backyard. It was just always there. I had a house for a while, early in my adult life, had this giant picture window in the back of the house, and it looked out unobstructed at Rainier, and it was like a painting. It was really cool, and I just took it for granted. When I think about it, I think about it now, going, that was really cool, and I just didn't appreciate it. So I like the fact that you say people are drawn to it, because it is an absolutely magnificent and stunning. It is. It's magnificent and stunning, and I think we shouldn't take it for granted, and we should appreciate it. So I think those of you that are getting out and hiking it, are climbing it to the summit and are and coming back to report on it to us that are vicariously living through your hikes and your climbs. That's pretty cool. And so when you're up there, do you take a camera with you? Do you take any, do you do any photography while you're up there?
Oh, it's incredible how many people live vicariously through me and whatnot. Yes, I do have my camera. I got my iPhone 12, but I also have a Sony A6000. I almost bring it everywhere with me, whether it's, I bring it to work, and then sometimes after work, I'll go shoot photography either at the waterfront or somewhere. But, I take these pictures and then I upload them onto my computer. I upload them to my phone, and then I share them with my friends and family, and I'm sharing these stories and whatnot. And it's very humbling to just bring back that memory. But then it's also very interesting because, pictures do not do justice. Just to be there in person and to see a glacier cracking or to see the rock fall, to be at the summit, freezing cold, but just the smile and the overcoming of joy, it's very interesting. It's unbelievable because this process, my first process of climbing Rainier, took me 3+ years. And, you're on the summit for maybe an hour. And so just that small time of achievement, but you have that with you forever, and you shouldn't take that for granted because, some people are not drawn to it, and that's totally fine. Some people are drawn to other activities, and that's great. I mean, that's amazing that other people, have other activities to explore and share. And so for those people that are climbing to the summit and sharing that memory with not only me, but others, I mean, that's just beautiful. And to see it through a picture and to be able to take the photo and then share it with friends and family, it's pretty amazing. It's definitely, I've been up there 3 times. I would hope to get up there next year. It's very, we have our work and we have our lives, but something about Mother Nature, whether if it's a hike or a climb, to do one of the hardest things in your life and to achieve it and to explore and to share it with people is just amazing. And that's what I love to do. I love this passion of climbing and exploring the outdoors and then sharing it with everyone. It's really great.
Well, I always try to keep it Washington State based, but I'll give you a pass. You don't have to answer in Washington State. Where's a mountain you want to try? Is there another mountain that's kind of calling you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would be lying out of my pants. My pants would be on fire right now if I wasn't lying.
So what is it? What if I could snap my fingers for you and say, okay, you can go here, where would you want to go?
I only have one option.
Yeah, you only have one.
Oh, goodness gracious. So this is, it's a mountain for sure. I would say, so Everest Base Camp is a trek, so I can't, that one's excluded. So I would say Kilimanjaro.
Okay. Okay.
If you YouTube, if you have a chance, see if you can find Snows of Kilimanjaro on YouTube. It's an old documentary, but to climb up to 19,000 feet on the roof of Africa and with the safari below. And
a couple of my friends have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's only one.
Yeah. Back in the day, someone I knew climbed Kilimanjaro in September of 2011 and was stuck in Africa for a while because of 9/11. So They had to stay over for a while because flights weren't, they were not allowing international flights back into the States. So that was a really very surreal period of time where they were able to do Kilimanjaro, but they weren't able to come home. And another friend of mine a few years ago did Kilimanjaro and had a blast. They enjoyed it a lot. But I'll give you another one because, what else? Do you want to do like Denali?
Denali, that's a funny one. So it was my senior year of college up at Western in Bellingham. I met Mount St. Helens has been great. Sorry, backstory. Mount St. Helens has been great because I've met great volunteers through their climbing institute and whatnot. And so one of the volunteers I met was wanting to go climb Denali. And he was like, "Hey, Darren, what are you doing next year? Do you want to go climb Denali?" And I graduated in the winter and we're leaving in the spring. So I kind of looked at him and I was like, "Yeah, sure. Let's go climb Denali." Denali is Mount McKinley in Alaska. It's North America's highest peak, 20,310 feet. Mm-hmm. They consider it to be one of the coldest places on Earth, and it is in some areas besides the altitude, it is harder than Everest because you are doing everything yourself. You have maybe 45 pounds of gear in your backpack and roughly maybe 70, 80 pounds on your sled. So each individual has the backpack and the sled. So do the math there. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of gear. The average time on Denali is about 21 days on the mountain. So I climbed Denali.
21 days?
Yep. 21 days of food. Much people climb it much faster than that, but that is just kind of the average, whether you're acclimatizing, going up for hikes and whatnot, resting, definitely rest days for sure. So I climbed Denali in 2018 with me and my buddy. It was me and 3 other people, a New Zealander, Andy, he came on from another team and he was great. Let's mistake that. I did not climb Denali. I went to 17,200 feet at high camp and we were all great. It was a bluebird day, but one of my buddies was not feeling good. He was very, very sick. So I elected to stay behind and make sure he was good, kept an eye on him. And my 3 other buddies went to the summit on a bluebird 0 degree day. I don't regret that day at all because there can be other days for me to come back and try for the summit of Denali again.
Sure.
It was a great journey. We spent 18 days on the mountain. So yeah, that's another mountain I wouldn't mind coming back and exploring someday for sure.
Okay. So then to wrap it back to Washington, is there somewhere in Washington that you want to climb that you haven't climbed yet?
New climbing peaks and new objectives come up every year. Okay. It's got to be something in the North Cascades. Or Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is a good, on the Olympic Peninsula is a great one, but I think something in the North Cascades, either Mount Redoubt or Spickard, just that remoteness too, being out there a long, long ways from civilization and the North Cascades. You can park your car and take a boat, or you can hike the trail and you can just be out there in the remote wilderness. And there's a lot of great peaks, remote peaks in North Cascades that I would like to someday get a chance and climb.
So one of the questions I always ask people, and we'll wrap this up so we can get on with your day and all that. I'm a coffee fan. Do you drink coffee?
I do drink coffee, but not on the mountain usually.
Okay. All right. So in your world where you work and live and play, typical every day, where's a place I should go try a cup of coffee in your world? Where's a good coffee shop that you think is a pretty cool place?
Oh, I got the one for you. So it's just on Cole Street.
That's what we do this show for, is I always find coffee shops.
Absolutely. It's called the Local Coffee House on Cole Street, right downtown.
Okay.
It's it usually opens up at 8 a.m. They have coffee. They have great coffee. They have little pastries. They have donuts. They also have a map in there. Little pins, if you're visiting there for the first time, you can drop a pin on the world and, see where you're coming from, where you're traveling from.
Right. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's a good one.
I like that. Okay. And then the last opportunity here is, so you mentioned you take photographs and you share them with friends and family. Do you put them online for people to see? Is there a place people can go and check out some of your mementos from the trips?
Yes. So I usually post them on Instagram. You can look up.
And what's your handle? Share your handle so people can find you.
My Instagram handle is DCHROMEY 253. 253, obviously, area code for Tacoma.
Okay.
You can find my website there, and it'll take you to photos and prints, and not just Washington. It'll take you to Alaska and Montana and other past adventures that have been great. But that's where I'm usually super, super busy, connecting with people, sharing pictures, making plans, met great people through Instagram. And it's been great.
Okay. Do you have any more climbs planned for the rest of this year? I mean, we're getting towards the tail end maybe of the season, but any plans?
Yeah. The climbing first, it doesn't stop. I hope to go down to Oregon in a couple of weeks. Go climb Broken Top with one of my friends and possibly do a Sisters Traverse going from south, middle, and north.
Okay.
That could be done in August or September. And then one other planned is Luna Peak in the North Cascades. It sparked my fantasy last year, just looking it up online, very remote in the Cascades, and it's got great views. And Luna Peak and a couple trips in Oregon, couple climbs going. The adventures keep going, but the climbing's always there too.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you hopping on and sharing this story with us, because it's pretty darn cool. And I have a feeling you'll be up on Rainier at least once next year, if not more than once. Sounds like that's kind of the place that you like to keep going to. And but I also think doing the North Cascade stuff sounds kind of cool, because you're just naming peaks that I've not heard of before. And not that I'm by no means, I mean, I barely know where Rainier is, let's be honest. But I love the fact that you're naming, these peaks that I haven't heard of before. And I'm going to go look them up and check them out. But the fact that you're going to go in and hike your way in and just do something that's more off the beaten path, if you will, that just sounds very, very exciting. And I'm looking forward to checking out those photographs and vicariously getting to some altitude with you.
Yes. Definitely looking forward to future adventures, future climbs. I'm excited, and looking forward to sharing some memories too.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, audience, for listening.
Yeah. We'll have you back on. We want to hear some of these North Cascade stories. How's that sound?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep you in touch for sure. And if I do a climb or some type of adventure, I will definitely let you know, Scott.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Yes. Thank you.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.